back to Onyx Pages, and I'm in Jerry, and this lovely, beautiful, gorgeous woman over here is Junauda Petrus Nasah, and she is the author of The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. It is your debut novel. I am so proud of you. And a number of the Penguin Teen influencers have gotten advanced reader copies of this book, and there's a lot of buzz. So just before we even start, congratulations. Thank you for writing this novel and and gifting it to us. So, and I also appreciate you spending some time so we can do an interview.
Oh my gosh, I'm very grateful. You know, I'm a huge fan of you and your Onyx Pages. So I'm just very glad that you and I have serendipitously and magically come together, and that you've been such a champion of this book. So thank you so much, Jerry.
Yeah, no problem. And for those of you who don't know, Junauda and I met at a facilitated, magical, amazing, immersive experience last year. And Junauda, that's where you told me about this novel that you're writing. And I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of Black queer folks who are writing, and you're the first one who has like written and finished and published. And so it's just really nice. I know that it can be a struggle because you're writing while life is happening. So just what an amazing, amazing feat. And we need your voice out there. So let us start with people who don't actually know who you are as yet. So who is Junauda?
I will say that I'm a runaway witch, nice. A cosmic bag lady. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a performance artist. I'm a pleasure activist, and I'm a bonus mama and a lover and a partner and a sister and a friend. I've done a lot of work that has been engaged with queerness and Blackness and Black diaspora futurism. I love things that have to do with sort of the mysticals, ancestral lineages of Blackness that, I think in a lot of ways I'm recalling and reimagining and remembering through being an artist. So my book is one of the many things I utilize. Oh shucks, that was annoying.
It's okay. Life is happening.
Life is happening.
There's just, it's cool.
It's cool. I like it.
It's fine.
So I think there's a lot of the ways that I utilize art to just remember things that may have been lost in, all of the oppression and, violence that, happens in lineages throughout the Black diaspora. So, yeah.
And how would you describe the stars and the blackness between them, given that this is who you are, and you've kind of talked to us a little bit about why you write, or maybe where your voice fits into the canon?
Yeah, so I'm a Trini descendant and a Crucian first generation American, born on Dakota land, which is the region of the U.S. that I live on, is Dakota land of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I think this book plays with the ways that diaspora has lived within my body. And it is about these two Black girls. One, Audrey, who's a Trinidadian, from, I know, you just can't help yourself. A little
You said it the first time and I kept quiet. Like, yes.
I know. We Trini to the bone. Audrey, who has a really tight kind of witchy bond with her grandmother and a very contentious bond with her mother, who's very Christian. And she's discovered with her girlfriend, who is the granddaughter of the pastor of her mother's church, and gets sent up to live with her Black American father. She befriends Mabel, who's a Whitney Houston loving, basketball playing, emo Scorpio. And they begin a friendship that very much lingers between the lines of platonicism and romanticism. And Mabel discovers that she's pretty sick with an illness soon into the book. And Audrey, with all the witchiness and healing powers she's learned from her grandmother, is seeking to heal her friend. And her friend Mabel, meanwhile, stumbles onto this book that is written by an astrologer who's on death row, a Black man. So that's sort of how I set up the book, you know, just so people are like, all right, these are all the voices that you'll hear is, you know, Mabel and Audrey and Queenie and Afua. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I noticed right away was how recognizable the cultural references were. And it was just fascinating to me because I grew up in Canada with Trinidadian parents, but there were things in like the dialect was really strong, references to food, references to even gestures and mannerisms that felt so familiar to me. And I noted up the book all over the place. I was like, that's Auntie Joan. That is my mother. That, you know, that's my uncle. So it was really nice.
Oh, that makes me happy. I think like, as a kid of the diaspora, there's ways that I very much feel like in alignment with Trinidadianness and Caribbeanness, but then there's also ways that I was shaped and raised by being a person born in America. So I think like I'm always grateful with people who identify in Trini in particular, but Caribbean in general, to see that vibration in the book, you know?
So who did you write this book for? When you first had the idea that you wanted to put this novel together, and as you were writing it, did you have a picture in your mind of who you would want to be reading these pages?
I think who I wrote the book for in some ways was my little self, I think. I feel like I would love everyone to read this book, you know? I think like I've been very grateful receiver of beautiful literary works from everybody, you know, from cultures all over the world, people of all over the world, different kinds of backgrounds. So I feel like as a writer, you know, I write books, you know, that I hope everybody can find some of their humanity in. I think like as a Black queer West Indian woman who was born in America to, you know, a very complex and big immigrant family. Like I think I wanted to see and feel myself in the works. And in ways, like I said, I did, but I think there's ways that when I would read, like Rosa Guy, for example, who was like the first kind of Caribbean, like Jamaica Kincaid, there was like, oh, wow. So I think there's a part of me that like, I would love if Black girls of Caribbean descent who are queer really felt seen in the book. And, I really feel like, you know, in a lot of ways, like I said, I was writing to myself. Like, I think as the book started to emerge, there was ways that like I kind of had to sit with my younger teenage self, my younger like little girl self, and be like, dang, like what were the things I've never quite healed around? Mm-hmm. And what are the sort of feelings and reflections in this book can I utilize as, you know, a catalyst to this healing? So yeah, that's, you know, I feel like I've been grateful to meet a lot of young Black kids, a lot of LGBTQIA kids who just like love the cover of the book. You know what I mean? Just seeing two girls kind of, you know, one kind of non-binary, you know what I mean? Sort of just being Black and having natural hair. Like, I think for me, like I wanted the book to not just have the title, but I did want to have images of queer love. So I feel like, you know, that's been, you know, the people who are in my heart, you know, are my little selves and all the reflections in the world.
Thank you. From my little self and my not little self. Thank you. Because I remember when I was 11, 12, 13, right? I was consuming a lot of young adult novels about white girls and about the boys that they were crushing on, like Sweet Valley High and Babysitter's Club and all of these books where we had these like, you know, white young girls coming into their own, you know, sense of sexuality, even though at the time I wouldn't have called it sexuality, but just coming into their own. And I unconsciously picked up on nuances and ways of being from reading these books, right? I learned about flirtation and I learned about eye contact and I learned about all of these different things. And I never read books where I had, you know, a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old Trinidadian queer, like young person falling in like or falling in love or lusting or flirting or whatever. And to that point, I want to just nod and say that your secondary characters also were amazing. And I loved what they brought without spoiling anything. I just loved what they brought to the story as well. So I really appreciated that. It was just nice to know that the characters are all supported in their different ways. And I think you disturbed a lot of stereotypes that we have about Caribbean families and Caribbean fathers and mixed families as well. Yay.
Yeah, sorry, my bonus daughter and her bestie and my homie just walked in, so I was trying to give them energy and let them know, please be quiet.
I love you and also shh. So just picking up on that, you decided to start your writing, like your actual novel writing, with a YA novel. And I'm not sure if that's what you want to do as you continue on in your writing career. But why did you start with YA? Why do you think that it's important to have a Black queer voice in young adult in particular?
Well, I think in some ways, just as an artist, I think art really finds you. Stories, spirits find you. And I think as an artist, like, you go towards the spaces you need to heal within yourself. So I think in some ways I had to write YA so that I could get to the bottom of some healing for myself. I think in my other creative works, like I'm also a filmmaker. I'm also a playwright. I've written in the young adult space that my protagonists have been teenagers. So I think people who know my work and its other facets, know different dimensions of these girls that I write about. And I think perhaps it's this unrequited space in me where it's like, yeah, what would it have been like to have had another Black girl that I felt like I could claim, and who would claim me. I think like what's beautiful about this generation, to some degree, I feel, get to have more access to exploring that and not feeling like they have to default to, as my homegirl told me last night, compulsory heterosexuality. Yeah. She says she learned that from anime. So shout out to Maya Beck and anime. Because I think when you don't have any version of your love, you just go towards what relationship description we see in the world, which has been, like you were naming, this white heterosexual cis space. So I think like in writing this book, I'm like, yeah, like the kids are ready for these conversations. They're ready to also understand that queerness did not begin with them either, in the ways that I think every generation is like, oh, see, y'all young kids out here being gay. Like that wasn't a part of who we've been and who we are, So I think like there's ways that I try to reclaim some of the imagination around what our sexuality has been. And I think Whitney Houston has been partly the device in that book, in this book, where it's like, all right, like Whitney Houston, I loved as a girl. I loved her, and I think about how it wasn't until I was in my 20s and living in New York, I met this woman who was an artist, and she was like, oh yeah, Whitney Houston, was gay back. I was like, what? Like, just, mind blown. And I just thought about like, what would it have done for my spirit to have had this person who I love so dearly be able to be her full self, So, and in a way that like I could have been reflected in, So I think that's been a lot of my journey, with this book. It's just like, okay, like I get to just create a world. And I think that's what's nice about YA. It's like, it can be a little bit more imaginative. Like my book is a little bit magic realist anyway, but I think like young adult fiction just like lends itself to the nebulousness of reality. So I think like it just is maybe fun too.
Yeah. And I mean, there were so many devices that allowed you to go there, right? So the whole immigration, moving from one place to another and dealing with all the emotions. I've never had that experience myself, but leaving a community, leaving a way of seeing the world and entering into another one, just at least it offered me as the reader an opportunity to sort of think about what it would mean to start over, right? And to maybe challenge the values, right? Because she was forced into a new environment. So I definitely appreciated that, and I loved what you did with Whitney Houston. Not to spoil it, but it really felt like an ode. It felt like you're paying homage to her in a way that I think a lot of Black queer folks tried to since her passing. So that was really beautifully done. I didn't tell you before that I wanted to ask you about this because it just sort of came up now, but I do want to ask you a little bit about the magic. I felt that you took a really light touch when it came to the magical elements of the story. And without getting into what they are, because I know that people want to discover it themselves, because spoilers are a thing. But how did you go about, like, what were your sources for the magic that you inserted into the story? And how did you make decisions as to just how much magic you wanted to sprinkle into it?
Yeah, I feel like the book, I don't know, like, I think it's like, as a writer, I certainly have intentions around things, but I also think so much of writing is revelations around things, like, so, and I think especially with a project like a novel, where you're just like, oh, there's just so much of you that has to like be in this world and kind of find the whatchamacallit, the rules of this world that I'm creating, and of course, like, I'm the goddess of this world, but it's also a thing where I'm like, yeah, I've been very, as a young person, always felt like magic was just at the like lip and the edge, if I could just get to that point. And I think a lot of, I think the magic kind of lived in that, you know what I mean? As far as the book, it's like, it wasn't always like, oh, hey, this is this consistent reality. This is a reality that is constantly shaping and shifting, and thus, magic plays with that. Or I don't know, the word magic is one word, but I just think it's sort of the like mystery, like, what is the mystery of existence? What are the ways as Black folks that I think we've are just so tremendously magical, like just so tremendously magical. And so much of our, kind of cut into racination and enslavement has cut off some of this magic, like I was just in Cameroon with my wife, and, it's indigenous land to African people. And I feel that indigeneity, but Christianity and Catholicism and like white Jesus is everywhere. And I really am like, what would you have to do to people for them to like cut themselves off from their strong, kind of spiritual alignment to identify and like completely lose themselves in this other reality, So I think part of the book is also like, well, what does it look like at this time to find and claim parts of our spiritual kind of like magnificence, So I think that's kind of where the magic lived in the book, was like, okay, these spaces of, leaning into like your ancestral connections, leaning into your healing connections, whether you knew what you were doing or not, just that we're so inherently like magical that once we just decide to like activate it, like things start to activate, and that's been my experience in my life, So I think like that's kind of how I played with it, was just like, all right, I don't know. So I don't know if that's just how I guess I understand it, but that's a great question.
Yeah, it really moved me because as I was reading, I noticed how you did it, right? And I noticed how magic was introduced through the characters, both of the main characters, in different ways. And I loved it. And I have to say, without spoiling anything, and this is not just a question, but I just need to gush on air, that ending though was incredible. I threw the book.
You're not the only person who said they've thrown the book.
I threw the book, and I was like, she did that. Okay. So it was wonderful.
That gave me goosebumps. Because I was like, you said what?
Unexpected. I wasn't ready for it. I had resigned myself to an ending that I thought was going to be there. And then literally, like, last page. Thank you.
Thank you. You're one of the people I know that makes celebration so juicy and like acknowledges things with such juiciness. And I think like, yeah, like the ending and writing it, I don't know when I decided that was the ending. It was at least a year before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a year before, you know? But it was even before then. I just was like, oh, that's what happens. It's not anything I even thought. Because I really was like, I don't know. Like, I just don't feel like that's going to be the ending. You know what I mean? Because once you have like a loaded gun, you know, symbolically, you know, in any work, there's the anticipation of like, okay, when's it going to pop off, you know? But I'm just like, yeah. So I'm glad that like that felt resonant. And then what was wild and Jerry is that like, when I look back at the book, I was like, oh, the book set it up. Because that's the thing about writing. It's like, sometimes the writing sets it up without you consciously being like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. It's just like, oh shit, I was setting this up, you know? Yeah. So yeah.
Or it was setting you up.
It was setting us all up.
Yeah. So that was so beautiful. So many beautiful scenes. And I also want to just gush and say that it is, you know, there's all this drama about, appropriate sensual and sexual and romantic relationships between young people. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate it. I've read a lot of wonderful fiction in the last year and a half where, you know, Black queer authors are doing such an amazing job of proving that we can have queer children and queer young people engaging with each other in romantic and sexual and sensual ways that are healthy, consensual, transformative, and generative. And you definitely did that in a way that just made me so proud and so hopeful. So thank you. So let's talk about your book launch. Soon. Where is it? I will obviously have but do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Because it's happening in a few days.
Yeah, it's happening in a few days. And it's like, it's so funny because I'm such a Trini when it comes to celebrations, you know? Like, and I think, yeah, I wanted it. It's a reading, you know, of course I'll be reading, but I'm going to have dance performances that are like in conversation with the book. I'm going to have a healing room that's going to have like all of these different essential oil, like, you know, healing things that you could make for yourself and affirmations and look at beautiful Blackness. I'm going to have my homeboy who's an astrologer and does a lot of stuff around ancestral astrology, who was really awesome to have as part of the process of this book. A DJ, just, you know, saying, getting it on the ones. And so like, for me, it's like, I mean, I just love a party. Like, okay, listen, I write a book. When I go write a book, we gonna pick up something. Okay. And so I just feel so happy to, yeah, just have like this thing that has been, I think that I've been kind of like isolated and kind of focused on as an artist. Like before I was a author, I was a performance artist and like kind of an installation, like, I don't know how you would even describe the art I do. Like it would be like big scale and it'd be a lot of community people and it would be very experimental. And so like going into book writing mode, I would be like, dang, like I wasn't engaging the community in the same way. Like I was just sort of in my own zone with the world of this book, like going into this world. So now that like these worlds, I'm able to birth this book into this world and bring my world to experience it. I really wanted an event that felt like you could walk into it.
Yeah.
So in the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, you know, is like it's like a huge kind of columned museum that's been around for a long time and has a lot of, you know, contentious history like a lot of museums do. So, you know, the staff there have really been transforming like what gets to be in this space. Like how do we truly welcome community? So I've been really fortunate to have them like just help me share this work by like opening their doors, and they're opening their third Thursdays, which are like their big, you know, evening gatherings, and letting me curate it around my book. So I'm just excited to get to, like, you know, there's gonna be food trucks. My mama gonna make a cake. It's gonna be cute. I know, it's so cute. It's gonna be just funny cute. Cancel cord, gal. I know. We just gotta do like, I'll come up with my mama to Toronto, and you'll just have, because that's the thing. Like for me, like books are very important, and I think like they're a way that like I could travel as an artist, and other people could experience my art besides Minneapolis folks. But I do want to bring the soul and energy of the kind of artist I am to my experience as a literary person. Yeah. So I think like, you know, I love, you know, the opportunities of just meeting people who are very excited about the words and Black words, and being like, how do we actually create space to be with each other? Because we can all be so emo and like in our fields, or at least I'll speak for myself. So it's nice to kind of be like, oh, yo, let's just be together and just enjoy life, you know?
It's going to be amazing. And we'll get this video up very soon so that all the booktube community, all y'all who live in Minnesota, I mean, I'm far away and I was considering taking a flight, which I can't, unfortunately. But if you live in the city, there's just no reason for you not to be
free.
It's going to be great. It's
great. So fun.
I have 5 quick questions. I'm looking for an alternative to the term rapid fire, but until I find them, they're like 5 rapid fire questions. Hold on, wait, I didn't even, maybe I didn't save them. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to make them up because I deleted them from my phone. Wait, maybe they're on this one.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, they're here. All right, ready?
Yes.
What was, besides the one that you wrote, what was the last novel that made you swoon?
That's a good question, because I haven't gotten to read so much in so long. The last book I read, which did make me swoon, was Wild Seed, which I had read before. But I think there's books, you know, like by Toni Moore. Color Purple also too. I read, I listened to Color Purple via the audio.
Or something.
You said what?
Audible or something?
Yeah, or audio. Yeah, audiobook. And hearing Alice Walker read the book, because I've read the book before and I love the book, but hearing her read it and the way that she sort of emoted Celie really made me swoon. And certainly, so, and then Wild Seed is just like
obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could have a combination of 2 superpowers, what would they be? And why?
That's a good one. I would love the superpower to make people look at past trauma unflinchingly and with the commitment to compassionately heal it. That would be one of my superpowers. Amazing. Mixed with the power of shape-shifting inspired by Anyambu. I'm like, hold up. This dolphin life could be sexy.
100%. What musical artist are you binge listening to right now?
Megan Thee Stallion.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I feel like I am reliving all of the Megan Thee Stallion. I'll just leave it at that. Enough said.
What's your favorite Afrofuturist book, film, or album?
I would say by Sun Ra, Languidity. I based a play off of one of the songs on that album. There are other worlds they have not. Well, there are other worlds they have not told you of that wish to speak to you. That's like the refrain of the song, and it's just a very emotional album and very experimental. So I would say like Sun Ra's Languidity.
Nice. And finally, if you could have a home cooked meal with any trailblazing person, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you eat?
Roti. I know the food before the person. Toni Morrison right now.
Yeah.
I just feel so close to her right now. And I just think I love seeing, I was studying in an archive once and I found all these pictures of her on a book, like, you know, on a book visit at a school, and she's smoking a cigarette. And I was like, yo, like sometimes you don't get to see the person in the brilliance, you know? And I just think she would I would love to eat roti with her and hear her like, ooh and ah. I feel like she would know how to enjoy food in addition to just getting to talk, you know? So Toni Morrison.
I saw this beautiful black and white picture that was going around the socials of her dancing
Mm-hmm.
at a club. And she was just like wearing a spaghetti strap, no bra, living her best life, have a big afro. It was like, that's
Like, why we just see this now? Like, somebody must have like been had that picture. And she was like, if that picture gets out ever, in the minute she transitioned, it hit the internet. I was like, okay, because someone would ask about that picture.
100%. That's lingerie.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are all my questions for you. Thank you for making time in your Sunday for me and for us, the collective, the BookTube collective. I will have links to how people can purchase a copy of the book online in the description box, and also again to the BookTube world. If you are in Minneapolis, if you're in Minnesota, you know where to be on Thursday. It's going to be wonderful, and I'm already jealous, but that's fine.
We're going to do something nice and big with the Trinities. We just need to round up a whole bunch of Trinities when I'm in Toronto, and all the queer Black folk and all the folk, and just have a funky good time. So we just, you know, the party ain't going to stop. It's just going to continue, baby. So
this is
don't worry about it.
Mostly making me feel better. Mostly. Okay, so is there anything else you want to say before we go?
Just thank you. Thank you, and Jerry. Thank you so much. Onyx Pages, community, all of the booktubers, all of the, just people who freaking love books. Like, I didn't realize how much people love books until I became an author, you know? And I love books, but I think the booktubers and the bookstagrammers are on a whole other level, because in a highly digital society, this is your kind of dynamic technology to be like, and the books are still important. So thank y'all so much.